All right, ladies and gentlemen in the audience, thank you for being with us again for another session. We've got a fantastic panel here today. We have everyone's photo on the wall except for lovely Aram on the end, so I can only apologise for that, but he was a late joiner. But we're very welcome to join us. Thank you very much. So Aram Ebam over there on the end, Principal Director of Lighting Design at EXP. I'm sure you can tell us a little bit more about that in just a moment. We have Shabani, who's the Senior Design Manager at Diriyah Gate Development Authority. We have Dave Gilby, Lighting Design Director at Diriyah Gate, and we have Chris Lowe, Senior Design Manager. So before we kick off this session, let's meet the panel. Let's find out what you do. Maybe you could take 1 minute and just tell us a little bit about what you do. We'll start with you on the end, Aram.
Sure. As you mentioned there, I'm the Director and Principal at EXP. We're a multinational professional services firm. I run the lighting design group for EXP. In a nutshell, we design spaces with a human experience, whatever it be, entertainment, hospitality, you name it, we'll design it.
Awesome. Thank you. Shabani?
Hi, can you? Yes.
We can hear you very well, yes.
So my name is Shabani, and I come from an architectural background as well, just like most of us here. And I actually started out as a theme park master planner 25 years ago.
Perfect.
And moved through casinos and now into museums and cultural asset design with Diriyah Gate.
Great, thank you. David?
Hi. I introduced myself on the last one, so...
Well, we may not have all seen it,
That's
so,
a good
so
point.
give us another little quick intro.
My background is stage lighting, so I'm from the UK theatre, film and television lighting industry. I guess I found the light and followed it. I'm a lighting nerd, and I call myself a lighting and visual designer.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Chris?
Hi, I'm Chris. My background is lighting design. I started around about 18 years ago, and prior to coming over to Riyadh to work for the Diriyah Gate project, I led BDP's lighting design team in the UK for over a decade. So we worked on cross-disciplinary projects all around the world, from small exhibitions to large-scale infrastructure lighting projects.
Amazing. Well, we have a very qualified panel, I'm sure you'll agree. And the subject of this is an interesting one. I like this. This is design and light alchemy. So that's a good word. Revitalizing museums through design and lighting. Now, we say museum, do we think Night of the Museum? Do we think Ben Stiller and Rowan Williams looking at all those kind of old artifacts and running around causing chaos? It's not like that anymore, is it? Museums are not like that. We've moved forward. There's new and innovative technology. There's ways to present exhibits, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. Now, I jumped on the Diriyah website briefly before this session, and you have a statement on there which is anchor your vision for the future on a jewel from the Saudi past. That's a brilliant statement and really, really important in this region. So let's talk a bit about reflecting culture through design, because that's what it's all about in this region, and I'm sure it is for you at Diriyah Gate. You can tell us more about that. But let's start with you, Chris. So how can modern design principles be sort of best utilised to reflect and respond to this kind of profound and rich heritage that we have here in Saudi Arabia?
So the DGCL project, the Diriyah Gate master plans, are based on Najdi architectural, local vernacular architectural style. And the way I like to kind of transpose lighting onto that context is to look at the way light, in the time that architecture evolved, in that period in which Najdi architecture evolved, what were their light sources? The light source certainly wasn't electric. It's about firelight, sunlight, moonlight, starlight. So when we're talking about designing in a local context underneath a Najdi architectural banner, we have to think about the qualities of light and the way in which light would have been emitted through buildings and through the spaces that we're currently designing for now. So for me, it's about trying to take some of those qualities, some of the aspects of those more naturalistic kind of lighting elements, and pulling them through into some of our architectural designs.
I think you're saying authenticity, aren't you? You're saying keeping it, recognizing what it was like. So, you can bathe a building in Congo blue or, bright red light or whatever you want, but it doesn't feel authentic, it doesn't feel real. So is that what it's about, Dave? Keeping it real, keeping it authentic?
It is. And lighting, when used badly and out of context, can be like visual noise. It can be, I've been in spaces and I've felt physically assaulted, punched by the lighting. But there's also a juxtaposition between what we're doing on DG1, which is very authentic, and there's museum and culturally important space there, and that plays right into what Chris was saying. But then we've got DG2, which is like Najdi grew up, 1 foot anchored in the past, which is really, really important.
Yes.
That anchoring. And some of Chris's principles still shine through, but some of those are incredibly ambitious with Starchitects and the use of media, the use of projection. And in even using any of these techniques that you see around us now, we still have to hang on to context. We still have to hang on to the storytelling, and we still have to hang on to location, culture, and everything's around it. And we've got the tools. We've got the tools to storytell in such an amazing way. But you've always got to keep 1 foot anchored in the past.
Do you think? Do you think as audiences or visitors or guests, we always need to think, oh, that's really well lit, or is it sometimes okay? You're shaking your head there. Is it okay just to not make a note of it, or not have it even cross your mind? Aaron?
100%. I think the most successful projects from a lighting perspective are when you don't even recognize or you don't notice the lighting. Because for me, it's not about the light, it's about the thing that we are lighting.
Yes.
Whether it be the historic or the cultural place or the museum or the artifact or the stage show or whatever that might be. If you notice the lights, then we've done something wrong.
Now, of course, there's exceptions, right? Huge, big rock concert, you might want lasers and light and fire and CO2 and all those other lovely things.
But even then, it's really about the music, right?
Yes,
and
correct.
it should really be, the lighting should be focused back on the performers at that point.
Sure. And enhancing that performance.
100%.
Not trying to get on top of it, trying to be better, And I think that happens a lot, right? It's like, what's the next thing, right?
Probably what's going to make this one of the best talks here is it's not just lighting designers on this stage.
No.
We have a really, really creative interior designer, and hearing the other perspective is, and so often we do this as lighting designers, we talk and we have lots of great ideas, and we think we know all the answers, and sometimes we're not properly understanding the question.
Correct.
And I think having the insights from Shibani are just going to, the cherry on the top, take it to another level.
I'm interested to know, Shibani, at what point in that process do you want to get involved with these fantastic lighting designers? What, are you thinking when you're creating these spaces, are you thinking, this is how this is going to happen, or do you, at what point do you engage with these guys?
I think collectively we brought up two really valid points. One is authenticity, and the other thing is to avoid making it boring or generic.
Yes.
And given that the Raya is turning into such an internationally recognized project now, we've got consultants from all over the world, very experienced architects, and what we're consciously trying to avoid is to make museums generic and universally standardized, because when you walk in to a museum, I think it's very, very essential that your visitor experience is imbued with local context and history, and it's almost like tasting the terroir and the fragrance and the flavors. And that, I think, is the cornerstone and the hallmark of good design anywhere, and that applies to any kind of design. You can't put your stamp on it just because you're the designer. It has to speak to the local context.
Do you think there's a stigma still around the word museum? Do you think people here? Do you think people think museum and they think they know what they're going to see or what they're not going to see?
Not anymore.
No.
Not anymore. I grew up in India and I worked many years in China. 90% of the people have access to smartphones.
True.
So they have access to all the information that you could possibly ever want. So you can't pull the wool over people's eyes anymore.
No.
So people know what you can't fool them in a museum. It's not just a static display anymore. And I think that's where lighting plays such an essential role, because it's converting a static object into a story, into an experience. And design, or traditional or classic architectural design has evolved so much as well. Museums are not just brick and mortar anymore. They're turning into digital art spaces, and spaces that challenge and demand flexibility and agility, because
And
everything's changing.
And of course, from your perspective, you're designing those spaces, right?
Exactly.
Whereas historically, you know, in older cities around the world, museums inhabit old buildings, don't they? And so you're stuck a little in some ways, don't you? You have to be super creative to make that work. But when you can design that space from a blank sheet of paper, I mean, fantastic. The world's your oyster, isn't it? You can really consider
Absolutely.
all of this. Yeah, amazing.
Shibani was telling me about Stephen Hall's Museum of Ocean and Surf. Just worth mentioning.
Exactly.
Yeah, please.
And this is what I mean about local context and about imbuing the experience. Is Stephen Hall's Ocean and Surf Museum in France. Before you even enter the building, it's got a huge plaza outside with a massive concave form that's beautifully lit.
Wow.
And you know you're entering a surf haven.
Yes.
You don't even have to read the sign. And I think that's part of context and experience. It's immersive, you know. It's more than just 3D. It goes into the fourth dimension.
Okay.
And they're building surfing out in the landscape, and so the storytelling has started before you take a foot even inside. And that puts responsibility on us as lighting designers to match the storytelling with light and visual techniques of the way architects are thinking about their buildings.
Well, let's dive into that a bit deeper then, because you're right. You know, you touched on it, Shibani. You know, it's not about static displays anymore, is it? That you know, that's museums. Years ago. It's immersive now. It's storytelling. We've got these wonderful narratives. So how do we do it? How do we go about it? What are some of the techniques that we used to tell the story of these exhibits, rather than just having us wander around and look at something old in a glass cabinet?
That demands a very long answer, but
yes.
To put it short in a very succinct or a concise manner, it's authenticity, and it's about planning for the future. And I think this is one of the forecasts into the next 5 to 10 years. And I was reading an article by Max Hall, who's the director of MoMA in New York City, and he said museums now are less and less about clamoring for objects. It's like what used to be an international race, you know, to gather
Who gets the
artifacts.
Yes.
And it's more about how we tell the story to a wider audience and to keep it relevant, because what my parents experienced is very different to what my son is looking for.
Of course.
And a museum has to cater to all that.
And to your point earlier, everybody has a phone.
Everyone has a phone.
Everybody has access to this stuff, you know. So
exactly.
You need to enrich those experiences when you come into a museum type structure. Yeah.
And lighting plays such a crucial role in that, because it's turning a static object, like I said before, into a story, into an experience. And it's gone beyond static objects now. We've got exhibits like Team Labs or the Van Gogh's immersive experience, which again goes beyond 3D. You're immersed in the art. And that's the future, that's the forecast.
So Chris, it's a balance though, isn't it, right, between innovation and preservation, do we think? You know, because is there a danger that we go too far with the tech, that we actually forget about what it is we're trying to tell, what it is we're looking at, you know, that story, that preserving that history? If we go, can we go too far with it, that we go the other way and it just becomes...
Yeah. I think it kind of, in a way, relates slightly back to my first answer, in that everything we do in this kind of historic, authentic context kind of exists on a continuum between total authenticity, no electric light, no AC, nothing like that, all the way through to ultimate modern comfort. And we have to kind of select a point on that for the user experience to ensure that the user of that space, the visitor who's arriving into that space, has the correct experience, has the right level of comfort, but then also we need to be representing that more authentic kind of look, rooted in local culture, local vernacular architecture. That experience needs to be exist too. So it's finding these pinch points all the time along that axis, and it might be that the lighting is actually very modern, very contemporary, but then situated within a building or an architecture or an exhibition space which is very old, an old building, such as grade listed architecture that I mean, I've worked, to give one example, I've worked on the Palace of Westminster renovation and renewal projects, obviously one of the most important buildings in the UK. Everybody's eyes are on every single intervention that is taking place within that, so everything that you do, the way every new intervention and upgrade has to be selected precisely and scrutinized and examined. But that again is about preservation of the architecture primarily, but then you've got to enhance that user experience, that and safety, and also comfort of the people that are coming and visiting that space.
Yeah, true. Great.
So that's a bit of a long-winded answer, maybe.
No, it's a great answer. It's a great answer. Yeah. Dave, I want to talk to you about sort of moving on in the same direction, but is new always better? Right, so if you're designing a space, designing a museum, there's all this fantastic technology we have here. Do you go, I'm going to see what's new, I'm going to see what's new, I'm going to use that? Is that the approach, or is it this fixture or this light or this source that I've used before works fine, so that's going to be okay? Or is it a combination of the two? How do you approach that? How do you approach the tech part of it?
The answer to that is yes and no.
Very diplomatic.
New tech can be wonderful in as much as you think about modern, non-invasive control techniques of lights in heritage spaces, so you don't have to add extra layers of wiring, kinetic switches, all of this. So it never gets away from holistic, joined up thinking, starting with the space, always starting with the space, starting with the usage. People, we talk about immersive experiences in lighting museums, and people quite often think of immersive experiences as standing in a room full of suspended LED bubbles and doing your yoga, and it can be just very experiential, but that wouldn't necessarily be very appropriate to a museum. Immersive experiences can also be cultural immersive experiences, educational immersive experiences, and so it's getting that balance right. And what technology has done, Chris mentioned, was it the Palace of Westminster? I did some work at Fitzwilliam Museum in Cambridge, which is a heritage listed building, and what new technology made it able for me to do is lights got smaller. It made it easier for me to conceal light, and I had this beautiful architecture that I was lighting in above that I had to pay homage to the building, but at the same time I couldn't let what I'm doing up there interfere with what I'm doing down there on the museum floor. So it still comes back to smart thinking, holistic thinking, looking at the space, looking at the culture, looking for the story. That's it for me. And I proposed to, when I was more junior in architectural lighting, I proposed this great idea, and it was Colin Ball. He turned around and he said to me, "You're not going to guinea pig new technology on my project." Yeah, is what he said.
People are scared of it, aren't they?
And it was dimming metal halide, so it probably was right. But
that sounds like Colin.
Yeah, but the point is, it's still you think of new technology. New technology doesn't have to be that in a museum.
No.
It can just be taking smaller, smarter, joined up, and using that.
It goes back to what
space.
Aram was saying, isn't it? You shouldn't see the lighting, right? You should see the effect of the lighting. So, of course, if you've got a tiny little fixture that does something the same as a parkan used to do, happy days, right?
And that's actually tougher on an old building than it is if you're involved early with an architect and you can seamlessly integrate lighting into the fabric of the building.
Yeah. Let's move on to sustainability, because I think that kind of plays into that. This new technology, lights become smaller, they use less energy. Is that something, when you're teaching students, when you're talking about design, does that play a big part in what you do now, Aram?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, electric light is what we do, right? But there's an incredible light source outside that is there every day.
True.
And one of the great things that I find in a collaborative process of working with an interior designer, with an architect, is how we can integrate daylight into the space. It's some of the most beautiful, incredible light to see, and in a museum space, it's oftentimes what they painted it under, right? Especially if it's a historic building. That is possibly the most sustainable way to start, is how can we bring daylight in the first place? And then we could talk about adding additional lighting in on top of that. But if we don't have to light the entire environment around first,
Absolutely. Yeah. And what's your take on the sustainability aspect of it, Shabana? Do you really consider that in those initial design phases? Is that really important?
Absolutely, especially now that all the work that's going around Saudi, the world is watching. We're diversifying from oil here.
Yep.
We're taking a sharp left onto sustainability away from fossil fuels. So it's more important than ever. Saudi's on a world stage right now.
100%.
The whole world's watching. We're changing how everyone views the country. So yes, 100%. All our projects are LEED certified, and it goes beyond buildings, it goes into landscape, everything.
Disposing of waste and all of that.
Yes. Actually, a very funny anecdote relating to what Aram said about bringing daylight in. So for 18 years I worked in the casino industry designing casinos, and the number one thing they told us was do not allow any daylight in.
No daylight.
People cannot know what time it is.
Time it is,
Create an artificial environment.
Yes, they've got to lose track of time, and the house has to win.
It's all about the brief, right?
Yes,
Absolutely.
exactly. It's what the project demands.
All right. This is such a fascinating topic. No, please.
So I was just going to add
please.
on the sustainability topic. The way I kind of conceptualize lighting design is architecture is basically light infused into architecture. So I'm not talking about electricity, but I'm talking about the spatial distribution of energy within a space. That's what we do when we put light within a building, and we direct it, we control it, and we push it towards certain objects and certain things. So we're literally when we talk about light, we're literally talking about energy, and maybe not the energy that powers the luminaire, but there's a light energy in and of itself that's bouncing around that building that we control and that we have to judiciously use. It's not just something that we can carelessly use. And I think obviously every lighting designer is going to agree that we have to be that we take that approach. And because light is relative, sometimes less really is more with light, because of that adaptation and the way that it's all relative to each other. So I think it's about seeing the scene as a whole and then composing that scene and understanding how that scene works together. And even just through that kind of very simple appreciation of that holistic design, we can start to reduce energy consumption. It's much better than using overly high uniformities across space and then ramping up the energy far higher than it needs to be.
You've got so much control now, haven't you? That's the thing, so much control with as David said, smaller fixtures, more advanced fixtures, absolutely, incredible. Right, I want to talk about this all day, but we have to wrap it up. People are tapping their watches. So look, I'm going to, last question briefly for all of you, 30 seconds each. You get a crystal ball, right? You can look into the future, but also in that crystal ball you can use it to design something. So what would you like to see? What would you like to see invented? Is there something that when you're designing a space, when you're looking at a lighting design, when you're thinking about how you're going to light a structure or a building or whatever, or an exhibit, is there something that you want? Is there something that doesn't exist? Is there something that you would hope was a little bit better? Who wants to go first? You get a crystal ball, you can look into the future.
I could look into the future, I wish design would be less tick box.
Okay.
I wish, people talk about smart cities, and this word smart is used. I want to see joined up thinking. I want to see holistic thinking. I want to see light that makes us happy, connects, and that can even, in certain environments, our homes and our offices, keep us healthy.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And that goes back to this idea of this holistic view of everything we do, isn't it? Shouldn't work. Lighting designers over there, sound designers over there, architects over there. Let's all get together around the table and talk about what we want and what we want to try and achieve, right?
And world peace.
Lovely. Thank you. Absolutely. Anybody else? Aram?
Well, David stole my answer.
Chocolate.
Yeah, exactly. Along those lines, I would love to see a space that speaks holistically to the entire sense.
Okay.
We dabble in it a little bit, especially in themed entertainment design. We talk about sound, we talk about lights, and we're starting to see spaces that will talk about smell or taste or certainly feel. Getting one of those experiences,
Yep. Love that.
I think has the ability to really bring, and to your point, authentic experience, memory. It would be just absolutely mind-blowing to be able to be a part of that.
And touch.
Oh, absolutely in touch.
I think, it's real experiences, isn't it, right? We're so connected to our phones and devices and all that. When you come to an experience, a museum, an experience centre, a theme park, you want to do something you can't do at home on your phone. You want to feel it, smell it, see it, touch it, experience it. I think it's a great answer, yeah. Shabani?
Actually, I think Disney started that fourth dimension experience years ago.
Correct.
I remember going to one of the parks and we were watching one of the vintage Mickey Mouse shows, and every time the rats ran past, there would be a little waft of air underneath, and it really felt like there were rats running under your feet.
Sure.
So, and it was such a mind-blowing experience for me as a little kid back then, and everyone loves that. So exactly what Aram said, it's got to move into the fourth dimension now.
Love it.
And it's happening. It's with Team Labs, these people are leading the world. So innovation comes with a little bit of disruption, and we just have to be patient and soldier through it, because it always leads to better solutions and better outcomes. Yes. Don't be afraid to get out, to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, true. Otherwise we don't achieve anything. We just do what we've always done.
Exactly.
Yeah. Chris?
We're going to go with a cop-out answer. Topic of the day, AI. I think we're at a point now where we've got incredible opportunities as designers. I think AI combined with parametric modeling is going to completely blow open creativity and experimentation with new materials, and also with things like custom bespoke optics. I was discussing with Shabani earlier about, as a lighting designer, wouldn't it be amazing to actually come up with a completely unique 3D printed bespoke optic that's one of a kind in the world that lights this particular exhibit that you just want to light in this one space. And I think these are the kind of things that this new technology is going to open up to us. It's super hard to predict where it will go, but I think there are a million opportunities out there.
3D printed custom fixture, love it.
But I think I totally agree with Chris, but you can't lose the human in it. It should be curated. There should be someone giving it the context.
AI is a tool, isn't it? It's a tool in the toolbox. It's another tool that we use, and it's not going away. We're having it, so we embrace it and we use it to make it work. Yeah, true. All right, listen, thank you so much, everyone. Please give my wonderful panel a huge round of applause. They've been fantastic. Before we let them go, does anyone have a question for our esteemed panel here, or did we cover everything for you? If not, then we are a little bit behind time, so we'll move on. If you guys wouldn't mind just staying here for the group photo, that'd be wonderful. And then shortly we'll have our final presentation of the day, so please do stay with us. Thanks, everybody.